Yo, what is up, everybody? So yesterday I accidentally brought a budget deck to a tournament. I don't mean I accidentally brought the deck I brought, but I didn't realize how affordable the deck would end up being, because it's basically just taking a starter deck and some Shadow Stars pack and throwing them together, and that's the deck, sort of. So the deck effectively, if you go in TCG Player, costs about the same as one Lunar Phase Full Moon. It's about $40 before shipping, which is pretty budget compared to Lunar Phase and Blitztricks, which are going to run you significantly more. The cost of one of the cards in this deck is the cost of this deck, because every card in this deck is in a starter deck or a Shadow Stars pack. Like, legitimately, this deck is really easily accessible and affordable budget, even including the side deck in that price, minus a couple cards in the side deck that aren't available in TCG Player. You can pick up pretty much this whole deck for about $50 after shipping, which is crazy. So let's talk about the deck and talk about Poison Nectar Monthly. So let's just talk about what the deck is. We're playing, or rather we played yesterday, Starbit Chronodile. Water Nexus, Starbit, Chronodile. This is the list I brought plus the side deck. So let's just talk about every card. Starting with the Water Nexus core, which is Aphros. You can Nexus up to 2 water. When you do, you can draw a card for each water card received this way. So Aphros is just a crazy draw engine. In the current meta, other than something like Bug Snacks, a lot of the 5 attackers that threaten to Aphros and base set, Frostfall, and the like don't see as much play. So like Necrof doesn't see as much play, Sorlet doesn't see as much play. Things like Nobby actually have 4 attacks, and Aphros in defense is a lot more stable than it used to be. And it's a crazy powerful draw engine in a Water Nexus deck. Your Togwa is your standard healer, so it's a 1/4. Whenever you receive 1 or more water, you can return up to 2 water from your spirit, or to your spirit deck from your underworld, along with Poseidon. This is a really good way at healing. It's a good target to just Nexus to, because we have a ton of ways to Nexus in this deck. Very good stall card, and under Galaxy, it can be a 4 attacker. Galaxy is a 2/5. We know Galaxy, PTA, yada yada yada, meme, but Galaxy is actually probably the worst card in this deck. As good of a card Galaxy is kind of antithetical to the core of the Starbit package, which is our kind of early to mid game like energy, like what we're trying to do, and Galaxy turns Starbit off. So Galaxy likely getting cut and switched with Eddies from the side, just swapping them, but Galaxy is a fine card normally, but it's antithetical to the core of the deck, which, as I mentioned, is Starbit Chronodile. So Starbit, a lot of people don't know what Starbit does because it hasn't seen a ton of play, but it's effectively a Water Nexus Cryoling. So let's just go through the card. So Starbit gets 2 attack for each water enchanting it. So a normal enchanted Starbit has 3 attack. You can Nexus up to 2 water to it, which would then get it to 7 if you put those both waters on the Starbit. And when it has 7 more attack, it Cryolings itself in your main phase. You destroy it or special send it to its Supernova form. So Supernova form is also a 1-cost water, 7/2 base stat. So you get to the 7 stat, you get to keep it effectively. And it can't be normal cast, so you have to cast it with the Starbit base forms effect. When you special cast the Starbit with the effect of another Starbit, it gains the effect that if the Starbit was destroyed, you first Nexus all the spirits from it, and then if you do, you draw a card. So Starbit Supernova allows us to keep a lot of spirits on one card without heavily risking them, because usually if you want to say EQ or Laurels, this Starbit Supernova, it replaces itself because you draw the card, and it nexuses all of its spirits to, say, Poseidon or another Elestral you have in play, potentially keeping all those spirits on board, which is a significant synergy it has with Chronodile that wants a lot of spirits on board. So Starbit Supernova lets us load up spirits onto the board without risking them too heavily, and then plop a Chronodile onto the board maybe the following turn or after opponent answers the Supernova. The Chronodile, you can disenchant water from it to destroy a card. And if you have at least 6 enchanting water or solar, it can't be targeted by opponent's effects. And it's extremely easy in this deck to have 6 water or solar on the board because of all the Nexus cards with Aphros, Starbit, Starbit Supernova, and Poseidon, Atlantis, etc. This protection is almost always online. At worst, if it's not, because we're playing a Nexus deck, this is kind of treated almost as if it was a 2-cost. You just plop it down, disenchant, destroy a card, swing for some damage. It's significant, and unfortunately, because it's not searchable, we do play 2 in the deck, so you can break by drawing too many Ascensions. Starbit including, we have 4 Ascensions. Starbit Supernova is the worst card to draw because you want to only draw it, or rather, you only want to use it to special out with the base form. You could cut this down to 1 Starbit Supernova, but 2 is relevant because it is the early starter of the deck, and if you get 2 base form Starbits, you're going to want the Starbit Supernova. You want 2. But you can cut this down to 1 without too many issues. We have 3 rabbits because we are playing effectively a mid-rangey combo deck, and rabbit's always good in any deck that needs consistency cards that it's going to have to find. And 1 plucky. You might say, okay, this could have been an Elechick. The reason we run plucky is because plucky does threaten Chronodile much quicker, where we go plucky turn 1. 4 defense is, again, as I mentioned with Airfrost, a little bit more stable than it has been in the past. And you potentially just go next turn Poseidon, Nexus 1 to plucky, ascend into Chronodile. Now you have 6 Spirit Chronodile protected that can start disenchanting top cards. So plucky over Elechick, you can really play either or, it's up to you. But since we're already playing solar, it's an easy include. 2 tsunamis. I don't run 3 because in the current meta there's a lot of water misenchants. There's a lot of people playing some water stuff with like water reanimator or enchanting like a Blizzstrix with water and stuff like that. So tsunami mileage may vary. I run 2 in the main deck just because I am iffy on when it's actually useful. 3 Poseidons because we need Nexus banks in this deck. Now Poseidon is significantly not threatened in this current meta because not a ton of thunderstorms going around. There's no real P-Gust going around. There's some wind decks popping up now, but generally face-up runes are pretty stable on board because people are mostly running things like Hurricane to deal with runes. So Poseidon face-up on the board, you can load them up with 4 every single time. Use them for your Nexus Bank, Nexus Spirits 2 and from them, stuff like that. 3 Poseidon plus Plucky, plus an Atlantis for an extra Nexus Bank. We only have 1 Atlantis, and we have no way to search Atlantis because while Atlantis is really good in this deck because, again, we're Nexusing Spirits and we have lots of water on board, so it gets our stats really high on our dudes. We don't want to draw more than 1 Atlantis ever, and it's just not something we need every game. So it's nice to have 1 in the deck so you know it's there somewhere that you can potentially try to find it to out certain board states, but generally you never want to see a second Atlantis except in some matchups, so I'm only running 1 Atlantis as just effectively a 5th Nexus Bank if we include Plucky as a Nexus Bank since it searches Poseidon. So effectively gives us 5 Nexus Banks for our Nexus strategies. 3 Ambrosia because it's Ambrosia. 2 Nectar of the Gods. Now this may sound a little bit funky. Now obviously Nectar of Gods has some synergy with Trotagua, where you can go Nectar of Gods, cast Trotagua, heal back the spirits right away on turn 1, get the consistency. It also has some synergy with Aphros, where if we go Poseidon Aphros turn 1, draw 2 off Aphros effect, pay 2 off the Aphros for Nectar of the Gods to get the spirits off the board, we can kind of double dip on our spirits playing Nectar of the Gods, or play Nectar of the Gods effectively for free and draw 4 cards with the right setup. Additionally, Nectar of the Gods in the deck is very good because if we have something like a Starbit with 4 spirits on it, that's risking a lot of spirits into something like Shield of Achilles. Nectar of the Gods allows us to, again, pass it off our Elestrals to remove how many spirits our opponents potentially might take off of our dude through something like a shield or other removal options. So Nectar of the Gods is kind of our counter shield play, counter PTA play. If we know that our Elestrals are in significant danger, and since we load up so many spirits onto them, we use Nectar of the Gods to pull spirits off of them to kind of remove some of the value our opponent might be getting out of things like Shield of Achilles, while also generating some card advantage for ourselves on the side. So it's that backup strategy, kind of extra leniency. At worst, you just use Nectar of the Gods to dig for other cards and answers. So 2 is good for that, again, kind of counter shield play and just like double dipping on spirits in a Nexus deck that loads up tons of spirits on board. But generally, the Nectar of Gods is just consistency at worst, and at best a way to kind of counter our opponent's counterplay options or mitigate the threat of their counterplay options. 3 Alto of Stars because we're playing a Nexus deck. This allows us to trigger things like Trotagua. Again, pull spirits off our dudes before risky attacks. Additionally, we can use this as a combat trick with a Starbit. So sometimes what you do with this deck is you play Starbit after, let's say Supernova got removed. You play Starbit and your opponent probably thinks you run 1 Supernova. So you play Starbit, you Nexus 1-2 to push it to a 5. Because it has 2 water on it, and then their turn they might go, okay, I'm going to attack over your Starbit, then use Altar to Nexus another water 2, pushing it to 7, which now means they're going to run into your Starbit, take some damage, and then in your following turn, the main phase, it'll instantly trigger into Starbit Supernova. Pretty clever shenanigans you can pull with the Altar, like across this deck. You know, things like manipulating Galaxy Swap, so you know, Supernova might hit board, it has a bunch of water on it, it's now a 2/7 because Galaxy is also in play, but now, hey, you play Altar off the Supernova, rip the water spirits off of it, use a Misenchant Spirit when you ascended it, so now it's back to 7/2. Other shenanigans, Altar is just a good card in this deck. and kind of turns into a really cool, clever shenanigans, combat tricky thing. Very good card in the deck, so it's the only counter rune that we're running 3 besides Gorgons. 2 PTAs, 2 shields. Your mileage may vary whether you want 3 of one and 1 of the other, or 2 and 2, or 3 and 1. Your ratios may vary, but PTA and shields are just generally decently good cards. 3 Gorgon's Gaze, because it's Gorgon's Gaze, it's probably the best counter rune in the game. So again, let's just go over the core strategy of the deck. Is we play our Nexus cards. We're playing a little bit of a mid-range deck where we can use cards like Aphros and Togwa to go long, heal, stall. You can use Starbit, Supernova, and Chronodile to kind of make these big swing plays where we just Starbit, do shenanigans, get a big body out, swing for 4+ damage off of Supernova, or get a Chronodile in play that can't be targeted, blow up their only back row because back row's kind of at a premium in this format because everyone expects Hurricane. You play Chronodile, remove their only back row, and just start swinging for 6+ damage sometimes. If you get the Supernova to just load a bunch of spirits onto it, 6 board, you send it into a Chronodile, and Chronodile has a natural 6 water solar spirits on it. It's almost impossible to remove from the game, which is significant. The Chronodile jump scare is hilarious and really good. Again, we're just playing this kind of Nexus water deck that can kind of go for burst damage with Supernovas, or go for a Stally long game, which are Togwa and back row and counter runes. Really, really fun, interesting deck here. Now, let's talk about the side deck real quick in the meta. The side deck definitely needs some tuning, and also the deck itself needs some tuning. So let's start with the side deck, and then we'll go over what I will like to change going forward with this deck. So PTA and Shield, the extra ones in the side deck, are a little kind of just there. You might be able to just kind of squeeze these in the main deck, or just take them out of the side deck and just run 2 and 2 and you feel okay. We're going to skip over the Eddie Kurabyss stuff for a moment and go Spoiled Fruit. This is just for other heal stall decks, for things like Draco Ray, etc. that are currently in the meta. It's just a nice kind of silver bullet to those decks. Divine Blessing is a really important card into things like Hurricane. We do play a pretty heavy, important back row with Altar of the Stars, with Shields and Gorgons. Divine Blessing is a really good gotcha card because it's always online, because we always have a ton of spirits on board. So it's a great way to just kind of go flip Divine Blessing, stop a Hurricane. Now your opponent has to rethink their entire game plan. They can't really just go full in aggro or full in Blitzkrieg combo, etc., because you have interactions. So Divine Blessing is a really good card. It's in the side. I could probably squeeze it into the main. The reason it's not in the main is because generally game 1 your opponent doesn't know what to expect, and it's a little less important to kind of, your opponent doesn't expect things like Altar and stuff. So I find it better just in the side deck, and then game 2, 3 potentially siding it in if you see Hurricanes. I think your opponent sides in Hurricanes because they saw all your back row, etc. It's so much fun to just have a full set back row, or like 2 back row plus Divine Blessing plus the Poseidon face up, and they go Hurricane. You just go, cool, Divine Blessing 1 off the Poseidon, your Hurricane stopped. I still have 2 back row. You have no idea what they are, and they're probably live. I literally had one player scoop a game when I Divine Blessing into Hurricane, because then you realize like there's nothing you can do against my deck anymore. I played Chronodile next turn, it's game over. So those are kind of the side. The extra Atlantis is in here. This is a card that specifically is here for Bugsnax decks. I did mention that a lot of decks don't really have a lot of consistent 5 attackers anymore. Bugsnax is the exception to that, where they have Spectaris and Viserys ad nauseum through things like Ardbud searches. So getting Atlantis onto board against a deck that doesn't really have a way to remove Atlantis, because Bugsnax doesn't really run rune removal other than maybe Hurricane. It's a way to get things like Trotagwa and Aphros up to 5 and be a little bit more stable, and a way to get Galaxy above Viserys, but Galaxy will still lose to a Spectaris, so that's a little problematic. But it is a way to kind of help these cards get a little bit bigger to defend against the Bugsnax decks. And now we'll talk about the Kurabyss stuff. So the Kurabyss Eddie stuff, Rock and Hard Place, is a side package against a couple of decks. One of them being Blitzkrieg. It's a way to kind of counteract Blitzkrieg decks, because Blitzkrieg decks get so expensive and so swingy. Kurabyss is a way with our deck where we can kind of go Eddie, Rock and Hard Place, shenanigans to pop Blitzkrieg, heal spirits, run over another card like an Ashbrow or a Cedar Sword with Kurabyss's attack stat. Maintain a little bit more board presence, because against something that's super fast like a Blitzkrieg, we might not even get to Chronodile. Additionally, Blitzkrieg doesn't target, so we can pop a Chronodile through its protection. So against a Blitzkrieg deck, we pull the Chronidiles out, we swap in the Eddies, and that helps the game plan a little bit more against those decks. Kurabyss is also pretty good against a Tornigen deck, because their attack stat caps out at 8. Kurabyss is a way to kind of, again, remove cards and start swinging into things like Tornadin. Eddy is also very powerful into the Solar Tornadin list because they're 2-drops like Tornadin and Draco Ray that they might be playing. Both have less than 4 defense, allowing Eddy to be played over them, swing into them, rock in a hard place to ascend Eddy. A lot of decks, again, because of things like Hurricane, will play 1 back row at a time. It makes it easy to just go rock in a hard place. You're doing your back row and then do your shenanigans from there, maybe ascend. Eddy might be in play already, etc., to allow you to kind of play the game out that way. So rock in a hard place, Eddy, Kurabyss are kind of against Tornadin, Blitztrick stuff. Otherwise, the deck is fine against most other things currently in the meta. So it's good. I really do think this deck is pretty powerful. You are probably noticing right now the lack of a lot of removal options outside of Elestral effects like Chronodile and Kurabyss. That's a little bit by design. I tried putting Earthquake in the deck. I tried putting Royal in the deck. Earthquake is fine, but does take up a significant amount of spirit space when we need so many water spirits for our Nexus deck. And Royal is never online with this deck. So I had to cut Royal completely. I had Earthquake on the side for a bit, and I swapped it out for the Atlantis specifically because I was struggling against some of the Bug Snacks decks in general, so I figured the extra Atlantis would help in that matchup because it turns out it does help a lot in that matchup. So what would I do to change this deck? Because I think this deck still has some iterating to go, particularly on the removal front. So first off, Galaxy, again, I mentioned this is the worst card in the main deck. I would move the 2 Galaxy to the side and put 2 Eddy into the main deck because what Galaxy is doing in this deck is generally what Eddy will do already without kind of hindering our Starbit Supernova plays. So 2 Eddy in the main instead of Galaxy. Additionally, I would probably take out the Shield of Achilles Poison Tipped Arrow and replace these with 2 Cryoblasts for removal options. Maybe 3 Cryoblasts instead of 3 Rock in a Hard Place. Do 2 Rock in a Hard Place, the extra Eddy, the Kurabyss. And yes, we run 2 Kurabyss because these are always swapping out for Chronodile, so we just do a swap because Kurabyss is better in some matchups than Chronodile might be. And it's once you do the Chronodile jump scare game 1, potentially, the power of Chronodile significantly goes down because now your opponent's going to side against expecting Chronodile. So having Kurabyss a little bit lower to the ground helps against those counter side plans. So yeah, probably cut a Rock and Hard Place, cut the PTA, cut the Shield, put 3 Cryoblasts, and an additional Frost Spirit in the Spirit deck, cutting 1 Zaptor. You could cut some water in this, but 11 to 12 is where I felt comfortable with the deck, because this deck will consistently put 7 to 8 water spirits on the board, meaning now we're dealing with 4 spirits in our Spirit deck, which means things like Drotagwa won't be as relevant for healing and stuff like that. So it's nice to have the extra water spirits just to get 2 in the underworld and still have a ton of leeway with our water spirits to play other cards because we put so much on to the onto the board. The 2 Zaptors are for, or 3 Zaptors here, but probably going to be 2 in the future, are for the Ash Rabbit. 2 Solar in case we run a Plucky out. We want to make sure we have the extra Solar for our Chronodile play in the following turn without too much impactful space, and also maybe second Chronodile. And 2 Owloon, this is for 2 reasons. One, it helps against some of the Nobby techs, Doppelganger techs, where we can now throw the extra spirit onto Starbit so it stays nice and 7 attack into a Doppel's 5. Or just helps against a Nobby tech, stuff like that. Helps potentially against dense fog techs, which are unlikely but sometimes pop up in a Bug Snacks deck as a side package. Additionally, the Flurmine, the one of Flurmine is here without the Cryoblast right now because it's for Starbit Supernova. Almost every single time you play Supernova, you enchant it with a Frost Spear on the special ascend. That way you're immune to Cryoblast. This also makes your Kurabyss immune to Cryoblast when you send in a Kurabyss if you're playing this out of your side. It's a really good way to just stop something that is a consistent removal piece in the deck, and something that naturally your opponent will go, oh, Cryoblast is great against Starbits, 2 defense, let me bring in Cryoblast. So it's really easy to play around Cryoblast with this deck, so it turns what people think is an auto-include against the deck into something getting stuck in their hand. So that's the deck. Those are some of the changes I would make going forward. And yeah, this deck is pretty budget friendly. Like, legitimately, every card in this deck will cost you about $40-ish. If you cut the Gorgon's Gaze, the PTAs, the shields out, which are staples, which you might already have because you might already be playing Elestrals, you can get this deck for less than $20. If you are new to Elestrals and you pick up this deck and you pick up the list I just showed you, well, now you have PTAs, Gorgons, and Shields, Ambrosias, a couple Nectar Gods, which can go in any deck, making the pickup like viable for future deck building, as well as the core of the deck that you're playing pretty cheap and effective. And if you're new and you already picked up a Chronodile starter deck and some Shadow Stars packs, specifically the month that has Starbit in it, that's 90% of the deck already there. You just need to pick up an extra Aphros, an extra Poseidon, a couple extra Altar of the Stars, an extra Eddie, and everything else is basically in the starter deck. So pretty budget friendly. The deck is really fun. Again, I'm still working on adjusting a little bit, but I found it pretty significantly suited to just play the game really well, budget friendly, and it's a good deck. It really is a good deck. There is some nuance to play at a higher level, but at the baseline, if you can just slap a Starbit play, slap a giant Chronodile and play, you're off to the races. So that's the deck. I just wanted to talk about it. I played in Poison Nectar monthly. Again, I went 3-2, not the best record, but in like a casual environment, I haven't dropped games often with this deck. So casual environment, it should be pretty good. In a more competitive environment, it's about average. I would say just under, like maybe it's like tier 2.5, 2-ish. So it's a good deck. It really is a good deck, and I really enjoyed playing it, and I'll be bringing it to Dallas. So if you guys are in Dallas and you want to play against it or check it out, I'll have it with me, and I'll see you guys in the next video, which will probably be a Coastalith deck, which is what the Starbit deck evolved from. So see you guys in the next one, and talk to you later. Peace. See you in Dallas, too. Have a good one.